Hi everyone and welcome to Esports Africa News. Once again, it's Achusi Kanku. And as usual, we always want to bring you interesting content for the African continent and about the African continent. Game development and esports is growing, and every time we are trying to improve from one stage to the other. Today's session is supported by Extreme Esports. Extreme Esports, unfortunately, I think I need to stand up so you can see, but Extreme Esports are based in Ghana. They are a major esports organization in Ghana, and they participate in a lot of tournaments. If you want to know more about Extreme Esports, follow them on all their social media handles. About dispute resolution, I mean, dispute happens everywhere. In social context, we're all humans and we are always finding differences. But today we're looking more into our intellectual property and, everything gaming and esports. We've got a guest here who's very knowledgeable. Leandro, give us a full introduction of yourself so we know who you are, and then we can take you from there.
Thank you, Gabriel, and thank you very much for your kind invitation. This is an excellent opportunity for us to promote, as you say, dispute resolution in the esports and gaming sector, and in particular for the African continent. So I'm a lawyer from Argentina, where I did my studies in law and then later intellectual property and technology. And then I started my career at WIPO almost 20 years ago, working in the arbitration and mediation center in different capacities in the areas of internet disputes with domain names. Later, I had a chance to be the representative of the center in our Singapore office, so having exposure to the Asian market, also very interesting opportunity. And later I came back to Geneva, where we are based in Switzerland. And since then, I've been working in different capacities, building collaborations with, member states, with intellectual property and copyright offices, as well as with industry associations and all the different stakeholders and players in the intellectual property ecosystem. And more recently, I've been focusing on content disputes, and that also includes the area of esports, video games, and all the different issues that can be linked to that. It may be like streaming, for example, and learning a lot from experts like you and the different people that we are meeting along the way on how to identify the needs of the sector and how the WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization, can play a role and can help this ecosystem to grow and to particularly reduce the impact of disputes, so we can all continue in our businesses, right?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for the introduction. So, I mean, we're all human, and gaming, esports is a social engagement. There's bound to be differences, there's bound to be disputes. So we're going to look at these in different categories: the athletes, the esports team, the tournament operator, and the associated businesses may be focusing on media. Us, we sometimes get things wrong, or someone will deem what we do incorrect. So there's going to be differences in that. So I'm going to look first at maybe the athlete. With an athlete, how much engagement will they be able to leverage to avoid disputes? Obviously, with contract, with their image, with their skill set, with their uniqueness. If I'm quite good at Call of Duty Mobile and I've got a way of attracting a crowd and I'm part of a team, and I don't feel well looked after in the team, and I'm wanting to renegotiate my contract, or there's a difference that I need to move on, what are the things that you're coming across in those scenarios?
Well, yeah, that's, as he says, it's very interesting, and the different interconnections, right, in this industry. So here, maybe first I can say that there's a lot of IP in the gaming industry. So IP has become more and more prominent. If you look at the athletes, for example, we'll be looking at their image rights, right? We'll be looking at when they're participating in a competition, and that competition is being streamed online. So there's a lot of sponsorship opportunities, for example. So all of that will include copyright or trademarks, and of course, for the athletes, it's very important to be prepared. So due diligence is always the first step, and having your contracts in place, having the right clauses in your contracts, and when it comes to dispute resolution, being prepared for potential disputes that may happen. So when you are entering into a contract, normally, it's a happy moment when the parties are
excited,
collaborating, and sometimes these clauses on dispute resolution, if you look at any of these contracts, the clause will come really at the end of the contract. Sometimes they are known as a 3 a.m. clause, for example, right? It's something that, okay, it's there, and in some parties to contracts, they may say, look, this is not, let's put whatever is okay. And then you end up with a clause that says, if there's any dispute, we're going to have to litigate in a court in a foreign jurisdiction where you're going to have to spend more resources, more time, more money, most likely will be more costly. Maybe you'll have to litigate in a different legal system, in a different language. So that all becomes quite complex. So being prepared is the first step. And for that, when it comes to options, well, you have to explore mechanisms like mediation, always giving a chance to dialogue and trying to resolve. Many of the disputes are linked to misunderstandings, and sometimes parties directly cannot. They're in very far away positions, so they're not in a position to really try to reach a common ground to find this commitment to say, okay, we are happy with this win-win somehow, right? Win-win solution. So you need the help of someone that is trained to assist the parties in this process, and that's the role of the mediator. The mediator is not a decision maker. It's not going to be imposing anything. And if the parties are not happy with the process, they can just say, thank you very much. We close this. We go to a more adjudication process where someone will say, okay, this is how it is. There's a decision, and you have to comply with that, like in arbitration or in the court. So mediation it's a very important tool to have in your contracts, and athletes, many times they will benefit a lot from having this opportunity to maybe, clarifying issues, renegotiating the terms of a contract, for example, and not ending up with a broken relationship, right? Preserving this business relationships. Then if mediation doesn't work, then it's good to combine it with other process like arbitration, for example. So you give some time to mediation, maybe 30 days, 20 days, 15, whatever works. And if you don't reach an agreement, then maybe you move to a process where someone will make a decision. And that's the role of an arbitrator. Arbitration has a very important component. Is arbitration decisions, which are known as awards. They are final and they're binding. So, when you go to the courts, normally you have different stages. You can go to a court of appeal. Like when you go to arbitration, then you'll be looking at a decision that whatever the arbitrator resolves or decides, this is what the parties have agreed to comply with. So it's much heavier in legal terms, but it gives certainty also. So if you are, for example, if there's no way to reach an agreement in a dispute and you want to terminate the contract, so maybe then you can be free to perhaps join another team or get another sponsor or whatever other issues, commercial issues. Then the arbitrator is the one that can decide, okay, this contract can be terminated because there has been some infringement to the terms or not. So that's why it so much depends on your strategy, what you're looking for. But in our practice, what we can see is that mediation offers a very good opportunity. And sometimes maybe you don't get to resolve the whole dispute in mediation, but maybe you manage to narrow it down to the real issues. That, there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot of feelings that can get hurt. And in mediation, you see that a lot. Sometimes it's not so much about technical matter, but more of a personal matter. And as you mentioned, we're human, so these things happen. And that's why we need people that are trained to help resolve disputes, also in a time and cost-efficient manner, and most importantly, knowing the industry and knowing the industry practices. And that's why maybe you see opportunity to talk about the IGET, the International Games and Esports Tribunal. This is a
Yeah.
joint collaboration, right, between the WIPO and ESIC, which is the Esports Integrity Commission. And this is when you have, another track of disputes involving athletes that could be linked to maybe doping, or it could be linked to match fixing, cheating, right? And then if you are involved in any situation like that, most likely in the tournament, there will be codes of conduct that you agree to when you register for the tournament, or your team register enter the tournament. And whenever ESIC is the governing authority in terms of this integrity disputes, then you go through that track, and there will be experts. There's no WIPO who decides that, or who's involved in that, but it's ESIC. They are the knowledgeable people, and they will issue the sanctions if they find that there has been any infringement of the rules, right? So that's another area where athletes could very much be involved.
That's really interesting. That's very broad, but this is where I appreciate the work we do, because bringing this to the forefront of many athletes, because half the time you pick a controller, you pick a console, you pick your phone, and you go straight into playing the game. You register for a tournament. Half the time you just tick the boxes to get through. You don't read the rules, regulations, and implications of what you do. And then you have got the conventional ways of playing your game, which then becomes a cheating infringement, or it becomes an infringement against rules that were set, and either lose your account, you lose your position in the tournament, or you lose whatever you were intending for, and then there's a difference, there's a dispute. Again, tournament operators and on the continent will also have to be looking at, the game titles and the international tournament standards. Are my tournament are they directly in line with what the game publisher main title tournament is, so that it gives it a good pathway to the international tournament? And that's something we are seeing more on the continent, that there are loads of tournaments, but the standards of the tournament are not leading on to the international tournaments.
Yes, that's also an area where we see quite a lot of disputes happening, right? So here in esports, of course, in order to organize a tournament, you need to get the permission from the publisher of the game, right? Yeah. Because you'll be playing the game, and for that, the publisher may have different licensing conditions and authorization conditions, right? So to ensure that you are complying with what the publisher wants, you of course need to have a very close discussion, and sometimes the conditions are very clear. Other times maybe you need to see and to negotiate how to do it, and of course there are fees that need to be paid normally. So that seems to be from what we hear from TOs, right, that this is a very common issue, getting the right license and ensuring that what you're doing, you're not gonna get shut down, for example, if you're streaming the competition or monetizing that somehow, and then maybe you get in trouble because the conditions, you didn't read the fine print. So that's I think a lawyer's job, right, to go through and to make sure, to ensure that everything has been clear, that you have the rights to organize a tournament using the game, that you can monetize that you can give awards, so prizes. So all these things are key to have in mind when you are organizing a tournament. Again, here you need, as a good practice, as always in any contracts, that the tournament organizers signs with the publisher, with the players, with the teams, with the sponsors, with the media, to have in place proper clauses in case there's any dispute, and to try to design your dispute resolution policy in a way that is time and cost efficient, because of course many times if you face a dispute and you cannot resolve it before the tournament happens, you may, that may lead to a disaster. So time is very sensitive in these issues. We've had in the past, for example, issues that were referred to WIPO mediation or arbitration, for example, with the broadcasting of sports competition. Of course, you need to resolve the issue before the competition happens. Otherwise, what's the point of the broadcasting, right? Yeah. So time is key. And if you go to the court, to a non-specialized court, you may face challenges. So that's why being prepared and allowing sufficient time and tools and mechanisms to resolve disputes is key. And we cannot maybe expect, the players to be paying attention to this, concentrated on doing their job. So you need the teams, the organizers, the legal teams to be prepared to know how it is. And that's what we're trying to do with IGET, to position IGET as a forum where the whole industry from around the world can rely to. And we understand that there are particularities in the different regions. So of course, maybe the practices to resolve disputes in some place may be different from others. So that's why we also need to be working with experts like you, and the different actors in the African sector to understand. So what do you think works here in this region, and what are the preferred options? And this is what we need to learn, not just come to impose this is how you do it, but tailor it and make it fit for the needs of the different regions.
That's absolutely right, and I think one of the challenges with Africa is, though everybody mentions it as Africa, that's a 54 country community, language difference, geography is different, and obviously cost is also very disproportionately different to Europe and also across the continent. So there's a lot of ways that we can look at that, but also is the speed at which some of these solutions are brought or differences are contained, because esports is fast. Some tournaments are like a day or two, they're online and you're moving. So how does IGET or WIPO or these international organizations, how they manage some of these scenarios in the past, how they manage to get resolutions sooner?
Look, we have experience in other industries, in other sectors. For example, I can make maybe a comparison with when you have like a convention and exhibition. In Geneva, we had experience, for example, with the car show, which used to be the most famous car show in the world until quite recently. And there, any participant in that show will have to sign a contract with the convention organizer, right? And in that contract, we design, together with local lawyers, a fast-track procedure, an expert determination fast-track procedure, in case there are IP infringements and someone, for example, is using a trademark in the context of the conference without authorization, or there might be some infringement to designs, like parts of cars, for example. That happens a lot in the watch industry or jewelry. So the system allows for a panel of experts that is on standby during the whole conference, that can be called. There's a chairman that will or chairperson that will be coordinating that. The fast track states that the dispute has to be resolved within 24 hours. Whatever the decision of the expert is binding. You can then appeal to the courts, because we cannot close, the access to justice. But before, you would have to go to the local courts, get some measure. Sometimes you would have to show up with the police to seize some products, for example. While now everybody accepts, when you enter the convention, that you will be bound by this procedure. And normally what happens is, whenever the procedure starts, you have a chance to discuss sort of a quick mediation. And in, I would say, 99% of the cases, the case ends there. So it doesn't
That's
escalate to
interesting.
needing, a decision or like, so it's okay, I don't want to get in trouble. Okay, fine. I just, withdraw the product that might be infringing without admitting anything, but saying, okay, let's avoid. So that works very well. And I think in esport tournaments, there could be some of these elements can be used of maybe having, and that's something that we're working on, right? I get is quite a new body. And for now, what we have seen is, party saying, oh, I'm in a dispute with this other partner. How can we do? And there you can come to IGET and we can help you to invite the other party to consider mediation. This is, consensual, voluntary, so we cannot force anyone. We are not the esports police, let's say, that we can just, go and tell you have to participate. But it's another tool in your menu. So if that doesn't work, because maybe the other party is not interested, then okay, you have to move to maybe a more formal procedure. Maybe you have to end up in court, right? It's not a magic solution that will work for all cases. It's giving as many chances as possible, and as we always say here, WIPO is lowering barriers of access to justice or to some sort of justice dispute resolution mechanisms.
No, that's great. And I think starting from that, we'll be learning the standards. And I think, having that information, you kind of mentioned a bit of that pre-recording about what WIPO, what I get, what the other institutions are doing, putting in place narratives, standards, guidelines, information to learn from. Can we explore that?
Absolutely, Gabriel. So here at WIPO, we have recently published, and these are other colleagues that are doing this excellent work. We published some guides on intellectual property and esports. It's 3 guides, but they are short, they go to the point, they're very practical, and it gives you an overview of one of the guides is dedicated to players, another one to tournament organizers, and the other one is more like an overview for the whole industry. So there you will learn as a player what you have to keep in mind, how can you protect your IP rights, same for tournament organizers, how to ensure that you're not infringing, that you are doing things the right way. So I think we can leave the links to the guides in the comments here in the description. So all your viewers, your audience can have access to it. Of course, it's all free materials, and WIPO has a very strong group of people here working on video games and esports in different capacities, right? Some are helping developers, like independent developers, and they could be suitable to African companies that are developing video games, for example. So on the whole process in terms of how to properly record everything to make sure that your IP, because the video game, that's your IP. That's what really,
that's it.
Yeah, that's the core, right? So this whole industry is very much dependent on IP. Because if you're playing your game is protected. You have many different elements. When you read some reports, says that the video games, the gaming industry now is using more IP than the music industry, than the audiovisual industry, for example. And it's true. You combine. I play myself video games, and you see, and it's a very IP intensive industry, right? You have your copyrights, that could be the code, of the software, let's say. Then you can have all the characters that you're playing can be protected. You have the trademarks that you're using for your title, even if you're using trademarks from third parties that authorize you to put them in the game. You even have patents when you look at the consoles. Of course, all the different manufacturers, they protect their IP with patents for the hardware. So yeah, it's very when you're streaming, of course, there's a very big component, and yeah, in order to monetize, to make a living in the industry, IP is key, is fundamental. So that's why WIPO's job is to raise awareness and to help the different actors to understand why IP is important and how to protect it.
No, it has become important. IP, just the knowledge about what you own, what you're entitled to is one. So many people might not appreciate the value of what they have created, and so knowing about it will help, and then being able to understand how then they can move on from the knowledge they have to actually protecting it, and where they can go to for any compensation or restitution following a breach or something in that regard. But that has been incredibly nice for you to explain to us the position. So we've looked at the athlete, the tournament operator, but we're looking at third parties who are either wanting to be in the game or wanting, or who the game developers need to bring in. We engage with a lot of people. So product placement, advert placement, is it just a one-time event, or is it continual use? Because if we work in January and in December, I've compiled my whole year's work and I'm still showing you in my stream or in my reel in December, have I misused your IP?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we see, of course, more and more content creators that are linked to video games and to esports competition. So they are. So it's always very important to read terms and conditions. I know it's boring and it's long, so
very long.
We never do it. Yeah. But it's important if you are like in a, I don't know, if you want to broadcast, to stream, in some competitions things are very clear and you have your spot and you can do it, and you're authorized to show whatever the organizers authorize you to show. Same when you're streaming the actual game, the competition. Well, making sure that you have the rights to do that. Otherwise, you may end up being shut down by the platform, right? Because you are infringing, and the IP owners have filed some sort of cease and desist or notice or similar, right? To prevent you from doing that. So
yeah,
we have to think that not everything is free, right? So you have to be, do not assume that you can just go and do and just like publish other people's content or image, for example. So for that, you need to make a good clearance. And sometimes this could be very challenging, right? Because there's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of legal terms, and maybe a content creator is like, doesn't necessarily have a legal team behind that will clear all these things, right? So that's the most common situation. So, and that's again, when I was talking about mediation and misunderstandings, many times there's no bad faith, right? It's not that, okay, I'm doing this to harm you, or really, I don't know, it's not like a counterfeit products, for example.
Yeah.
So here it's like, oh, I thought I could do it. And maybe you end up in a situation where it's not a very happy place. So I think the lesson or what it's the suggestion maybe is to make sure that you can do the things that you want to do by clearing, but by checking, by understanding what can be done and what cannot be done.
How's access? I know you mentioned, I don't know which organization has got the catchphrase lowering the barrier for access to dispute resolution. How low is this barrier? How can we easily access these opportunities to settle disputes?
Yeah, so we are here, in terms of cost, because that's something that someone always asks, okay, it is expensive or so. It goes on a case-by-case basis. So the cost of dispute resolution has to make sense comparing to the cost of the actual dispute, right? And for that, we can always find ways to make it work for everybody. But at the same time, if you need an expert, you have to also pay for that, because you're not going to a court that is not specialized, but you're going to someone that knows and that will give you a quality outcome or will help you to achieve a win-win solution. So there has to be some cost. So everybody has to be happy in order for the case to move. And we as WIPO, we are in our let's say intellectual property cases, we also do something similar to what we're doing with iGet. So that should not be a problem. That is something that has to be agreed. Then any contact or any initial let's say, proposition to another party to consider, that's all free of charge. So we have online forums, and we can also put the links to that and how to contact us. You can book an orientation session with us, and we have our staff. By the way, it's very multicultural staff that speak different languages. Our procedures are now available for the continent, for example, in English and French for sure. Later, we will definitely have them in other languages like Portuguese or Arabic. So we ensure that more people can have access to these tools, and the staff that works in iGate and in WIPO also is multicultural, and we have a good understanding on dispute resolution in different regions. And we cannot give any legal advice, of course. We cannot represent. We're neutral. So what we can do is help you to understand how things work. And if you're in a dispute, say like, okay, these are the options that you have here. If you want to invite someone, you do it through us, so the other party knows it's something serious, and there's something that can be done, that we can help. And there's no cost for that, right? For that initial interaction. That's lowering barriers. I'm making it easy for everyone to at least try. And then once the other party accepts, then there these fees that may apply. But again, on a case-by-case basis.
No, I appreciate it, because you've lowered the barrier even further by taking the time off your busy schedule to speak to us, and this is going to be on spread through all our social network and our website, which also helps more people understand their position even better. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything you've done so far and the information you've left behind for us. We will repurpose this, share it with our community and educate more. For Esports Africa News is educate, empower, and entertain. So we'll get to do a bit more education, and hopefully we get to grow the industry, and Africa will get its own dispute resolution mechanism. So we have a more thriving, economy rather than a pulling down economy.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel. It's been really nice, having the chance to reach out to your audience, and we'll be happy to continue doing things in the region for sure.
Appreciate that. Thank you.